Why is there something instead of nothing? We picture nothing as a black room, but that's already a place with darkness in it. Real nothing would be no space, no time, no rules at all. And if there's no time, nothing can't change, because change needs a before and an after. So true nothing would just sit there. But that's a kind of rule too, which means it's not nothing anymore. So one idea is this: maybe nothing is impossible. Maybe the simplest thing that can exist is a set of rules. And once rules exist, a universe can happen. In our best physics, even the emptiest space isn't truly empty. It has little ripples of possibility, and pairs of particles can appear and vanish. That only makes sense if there's space and a law that lets it happen. And there's another thought. The total energy of a universe like ours might add up to about 0. Matter gives positive energy, gravity gives negative energy, and they can cancel. So a universe might not need any stuff to be paid in, which makes something from nothing less shocking. We don't know why there are rules at all, but we know this. In a universe where the books can balance to 0, something isn't unlikely. It's the stage where a question like this can be asked. What came before time? We ask it like there was a moment before the first moment. But before is a time word, and if time begins with the universe, the question bends back on itself. In Einstein's picture, space and time are woven together, and the Big Bang isn't a firework in space. It's the start of the fabric itself. So asking what was earlier can be like asking what's north of the North Pole. Still, maybe time didn't start there. Some ideas suggest a bounce, where an older universe collapsed and then expanded again. So our time has a parent time. And there's a deeper thought, that at the smallest scales the word before doesn't mean anything, because change itself flickers, and time might emerge the way heat emerges from many tiny motions. We feel the pull of the question because our lives have a start, and we want the cosmos to have one too, or at least a story we can step back from. But we live inside time, so our language leans on it. Before, time is either nothing to talk about, or it's more time, or it's a deeper order from which time appears. And either way, it tells us something simple and huge, that the universe gives us a when, and that's why we can ask at all. How did matter start thinking? A rock and a person are built from the same atoms, so what changed? Not the parts, but the pattern. After Earth cooled, chemistry tried countless combinations. Most went nowhere, but some molecules made copies, and copies that endured, lasted. That is where life begins, with matter that remembers and repeats. Over time, these little systems learn to sense and to act. A twitch that moved toward food stayed, and a twitch that moved away from harm stayed. Strings of cells pass signals. Those cells became neurons, cells that send quick pulses. Link enough of them, and you get a nervous system. Link billions into loops with memory and feedback, and you get a brain. Thinking isn't a ghost added to matter. It's what matter does when it carries information about the world and about itself and uses it to predict what might happen next. A brain is a storm of signals that models the world and tries out futures without moving. That helped us survive, and it opened a door to inner life. We still don't know why this feels like something from the inside, but we can see the path from atoms to attention and to a mind that can ask how it began. Stardust learned to wonder. What makes life alive? We're made of the same atoms as dust and stone, yet we can heal and remember and choose. So what tips matter over into life? It begins with a boundary. A cell draws a thin line around itself, and that line lets it keep what helps and push out what harms. Inside, pieces of chemistry link into a loop. They pull in energy from light or food, and they use it to repair the loop and to copy it. Left alone, things mix and settle. But life spends energy to hold a tiny island of order together. There's a recipe written in molecules, passed on with little mistakes, and those mistakes let the recipe try new ways. Useful ways stay. That's evolution, a slow way for matter to learn without thinking. So life isn't a thing we can point to, it's a pattern that keeps itself going. It's matter that answers the world and keeps changing the answer. In us, trillions of cells do this in concert. Each breath brings fuel, and each heartbeat moves it, and each thought is one pattern talking to another. What makes life alive is this ongoing reach against the slide to stillness. It's matter with memory, shaped by history, carrying itself forward, one fragile heartbeat at a time. Is the universe aware of itself? I like how this question folds back on the thing asking it. Because we're made of the universe, and we're aware, so in at least one place, the universe is looking out and noticing. Not as a single mind spread across space, but as small minds, lit for a while, inside it. Stars made the carbon in brains, and planets let those atoms arrange into patterns that can feel and think. Awareness seems to appear when matter is arranged in a rich way, and it doesn't need magic. It needs time and connection and energy flowing. So does that count as the universe knowing itself? If the universe means everything together, then its awareness is patchy and local and brief. It wakes in animals and in us, and it fades, and it wakes again somewhere else. If there are other worlds with life, there are other pockets of noticing too. And if there are none, then this is rarer than we like to think, which makes it more precious. What's striking is that awareness isn't outside the story. It's a chapter in the same physics that makes oceans and mountains. So the honest answer might be yes, but only like this. The universe becomes aware where it builds minds. And being human is one way it does that, for a moment, on this small world. Are we part of a plan or an accident? We ask this because stories have authors, and we want the universe to speak like that. But it mostly speaks in rules and in chance. Gravity gathers gas, stars light, and inside them the simple stuff is fused into the ingredients of life. Planets form from dust. On one world, water and carbon meet, and small molecules learn to copy with tiny errors. Over long time, those errors are tested. That's evolution, keeping what works and letting go of what doesn't. Is that a plan? There's no sign of a set goal, no line that says minds must appear. But it isn't a pure accident either, because the rules narrow the field. When energy flows and time is deep, complexity can build again and again. Patterns rise because the universe allows them, and once they rise, they can climb. The details are fragile though. Shift one event and history bends. A snowball Earth, a stray rock, a change in a gene, and everything we know moves sideways. Rewind the tape and life might still bloom, but not this exact path, not these faces. So we sit between plan and accident. We're chance exploring the space that law makes. And because we weren't promised, our being here feels like a real, earned surprise. Can anything exist without being seen? It's a strange idea that things need our eyes to be real. The universe was cooking stars and folding mountains long before eyes evolved. Dinosaurs walked across mud, and no mind named them, and still they were there. The far side of the moon waited in shadow, and it didn't blink into being when a camera arrived. Seeing is just one way of knowing, and it's not the only one. Things show themselves by their effects. The wind is invisible, but trees lean and waves rise, so we know it's there. A planet can hide in darkness, and we still find it because its star wobbles a little. Even whole swathes of matter in galaxies seem unseen, and yet their pull keeps the stars from flying apart. At the tiniest scales, when we try to measure, we can disturb what we're looking at, so what we see depends on how we look. But that doesn't mean nothing was there. It only means our questions have weight, and the world answers in the language we use. And there's a human echo here. We sometimes fear we only matter when noticed, but value isn't a spotlight. Most of a life happens off stage, and still it's real. Reality doesn't wait for eyes. It leaves traces, and sometimes those traces are us. Where does a thought come from? Sometimes a thought seems to appear from nowhere, but it starts in a living network of brain cells that are always talking, even when nothing much is happening. Tiny pulses run along those cells, and chemicals jump the gaps, and patterns form and fade like weather. Senses are feeding it all the time, and the body is sending signals about hunger and heartbeat and posture, and memories are waiting like stored paths. So a thought begins when some pattern pulls many of these streams together and crosses a line, and it stands out from the background. It isn't a single place, it's many small causes adding up. There's noise in the system, and there's learning that shapes the flow, so the brain keeps guessing what will matter next. Sometimes the guess is a word, sometimes an image, sometimes a plan. Language can catch the shape of it and hold it still, but the spark often forms before the words. That's why a solution can surface in the shower, because the hidden work has been running, and then the pattern tips into awareness. So a thought comes from a body in a world, guided by past experience, stirred by the present, and filtered by attention. It's the moment a moving pattern enters awareness. Is time real or imagined? The strange thing is, we don't see time itself, we see change, and we give that change a direction. A shadow moves across a wall, and we say an hour has passed. So, is that hour out there in the world, or only in our heads? There's a good clue. If you take two clocks and put one on a mountain and one by the sea, they won't agree. The higher clock ticks a tiny bit faster because gravity is weaker up there, and moving clocks tick differently too. Our navigation satellites correct for this every day, or they drift. So time isn't just an idea. It's built into how the world behaves. But the flow of time, the sense of a single now, that feels different. The brain stitches moments together with memory and prediction, and it makes a smooth river from many small drops. That's why a minute can feel long when we wait, and a year can vanish when we look back. The world gives us change, and the mind gives it a story. There's also a direction we can point to. Heat spreads, eggs break, smoke doesn't crawl back into a matchbox. That one-way drift is called the arrow of time, and it's tied to how disorder grows. So time is real enough to bend clocks and set an arrow, and imagined in how it feels as it carries us along. What makes reality real? Maybe the simplest answer is this. Reality pushes back. It resists wish and story, and it keeps behaving the same way when no one is watching. Drop a stone and it falls, and it will fall tomorrow, and the day after. Build a bridge using those patterns and it holds, not because we hope, but because the patterns are there. We call those patterns laws, but they're really habits of the universe. The same ones show up in a kitchen and in a galaxy, and that sameness is a clue. Light from a star bends around a massive object, and a beam in a lab does the same. Separate minds measure the world, and when the work is careful, they agree. If they don't, the world decides in the next result. Imagination is quick and free, because a picture in the head changes the moment the thought changes. The world outside is slower and stubborn, and that stubbornness gives it weight. It lets us test ideas and be wrong and learn. And reality isn't only rocks and stars. A feeling is real when it leaves a trace in a body, shapes a choice, changes a life. It has causes and effects too. So what makes reality real? It keeps its promises, even when no one asks it to. Does the universe have an edge? We grow up with edges, with fields and oceans and maps. So it's natural to ask if the universe ends somewhere, in the way we mean a wall or a cliff. The answer seems to be no. You can keep going in any direction and there's no border to bump into. Space may be endless, or it may wrap around on itself, like the surface of Earth, where you can travel forever and come back to where you started, but without an edge to fall off. There is another kind of edge, though. It's the edge of what we can see. Light takes time to reach us, and the universe has only been shining for so long. So there's a horizon around us. Beyond it, there isn't nothing. There's more universe, but its light hasn't had time to arrive, and the beginning didn't happen at one spot either. The Big Bang wasn't a ball exploding into empty space. Space itself began to stretch everywhere at once, and it still does, carrying galaxies apart like dots in rising bread. So there's no outside it's expanding into. It's the distance between things that grows. As humans, we live with horizons too. We stand at the limit of our view and learn. So the universe doesn't end with a wall. It ends, for us, with a horizon we keep walking toward. Why do we exist at all? Maybe the first thing to say is that why can mean two things. It can mean what caused us, and it can mean what purpose there is. Nature answers the first more clearly, and the second is something minds like ours create. We exist because the universe follows simple rules that let matter and energy form patterns. At the start, it was hot and fast, and there was a tiny tilt that left a little more matter than antimatter. That small leftover became clouds, and the clouds became stars. In those stars, light elements were pressed into carbon and oxygen and iron. When stars died, they scattered those atoms, and some of that dust gathered into worlds. On at least one of them, chemistry found a way to copy itself. Copies made mistakes, and the better ones stayed, and over long time, that became life. Brains grew that could hold memories and imagine futures, and one day, a question like this appeared. But why these rules and not others? No one knows. Maybe there are many possible universes, and we are in one that allows life. Or maybe these laws are the only ones that can work. Either way, our existence was allowed, not guaranteed. So the cause is cosmic, and the purpose is lived. Meaning is what we make with our brief spark. Is chaos just hidden order? It looks wild at first, doesn't it? Like white water in a river or the night sky full of clouds. And yet the water follows gravity, and the clouds follow heat and wind, and there are rules under all that motion. Chaos means tiny changes matter a lot. So the path twists in ways we can't pin down, but it doesn't mean anything goes. Weather is like that. We can't say where a gust will turn in a week, but we can say the season will warm or cool, because the sun sets the stage. Nature loves simple rules that build rich patterns. Birds follow a few cues and a flock ripples like smoke. A plant follows growth and constraint, and a leaf veins itself again and again. At small and large scales, we see shapes that echo each other, so there's structure even when the edges look broken. Human life feels the same. A day can spill in every direction, and still habits pull us, and values steer us, and the shape of a culture rises from countless small choices. We can't forecast the details of a life, but we can know the kinds of stories that emerge. So chaos isn't order's opposite. It's order with sensitivity turned up, where we see the outline, but not the exact path. What happens when nothing happens? We say nothing's happening when the room sits still and there's nothing to react to, but that's only how it looks. Nothing is a feeling, not a fact. Everything we notice is change, and when change drops below our notice, we call it nothing. But the clock in the body keeps going. The heart moves, molecules bump, tiny repairs stitch cells back together. thoughts don't stop because the brain runs its background work, filing traces of the day and testing small futures against old memories. Air drifts, dust settles, light crosses the floor in silence. Far away, continents creep, trees turn light into sugar, and in deep space, stars burn while space itself stretches. So what happens is that the loud changes pause and the hidden ones carry on. Heat leaks and things drift toward disorder. And that slow slide gives time its direction. And something else happens that's very human. When events stop crowding the stage, attention has room to widen. A feeling that was buried comes into view. A thought joins two old ideas and makes a new path. It turns out nothing is the groundwork for the next thing. It's the world rebuilding its edges and us updating our map of it. So when nothing happens, time is working and we're quietly becoming. Could existence ever stop? It sounds simple, but it hides a knot. What would it mean for everything to stop? Because stopping is a word that lives inside time. There's a before and an after. If time itself ended, there'd be no after to point to. So the idea slips away when you try to hold it. Still, we can picture endings. Stars burn out and black holes fade, and the universe cools as it spreads. If change runs down so far that almost nothing happens, time loses its grip because we measure time by change. That isn't a bang of an ending. It's more like the lights thinning until there's no more pattern to see. There are sharper ends in the equations. Space might be balanced in a state that can suddenly drop to a deeper one, and a bubble of new physics could race out and rewrite everything. Or gravity could one day pull all things back, or expansion could tear even atoms apart. These are live possibilities, but we don't know which, if any, will happen. And there's the human side. Our lives do stop, and that makes us ask about the whole. But the universe doesn't share our scale, and if it ends, there's no later to remember it. So the real weight sits here. We exist now, and that's not a small fact. Are we alone? A clear night makes a simple thought hard to shake. There are so many stars that it feels odd to think we're the only life. Our galaxy holds hundreds of billions of suns, and there are trillions of galaxies more, spread through space like scattered seeds. We've found planets by the thousands, and many sit where liquid water could last. The raw stuff is everywhere. Water and carbon and simple molecules dusting clouds between stars. On Earth, once the surface cooled, life appeared quite fast, so it might not be rare. But the sky is quiet. We've listened and watched, and we haven't heard a whisper. Distance is part of it, because the Milky Way is vast, and a message can take tens of thousands of years to cross it. Time is part of it too, because a thinking species may shine for a brief moment, then fall silent, and two moments may never overlap. And maybe life often stays simple, because the climb to minds is steep, and many worlds stall on the way. Either answer is heavy. If we're alone, then every living thing rests on our small world, and meaning is ours to keep. If we're not, then we share the universe with neighbors we haven't met yet. So we search, and in searching, we learn who we are. What does it mean to be real? Maybe real is whatever pushes back. Touch a rock and it's hard, and if we ignore gravity, we fall. That kind of real doesn't wait for belief. It carries on in the dark when no one is watching. But there are other kinds of real. A rainbow is real, yet only from a certain angle. Change where we stand, and it vanishes, because the drops, the light, and the eye make it together. Pain is real, even when no machine can point to it, because it changes choices and leaves traces in memory and action. Money is real, not as metal and ink, but as shared agreement that can build roads and start wars. So maybe real means this. It has power to cause. It makes a difference to what happens next. In science, we test that by prediction. In life, we notice it when the world answers back. And being human sits in the middle. We're atoms born in stars, bound by simple laws, and we're makers of meanings that steer those atoms. Love isn't a particle, but it moves hands, it moves lives, so it belongs in what is. To be real is to persist across many views, or to press on a life in a way that can't be wished away. That's a solid place to stand. Is everything connected? It helps to ask what kind of connection we mean. There's a deep one that starts at the beginning, because every atom in our bodies was made in stars. So we share a history with the sky, and with stones, and with trees. There's another kind that's here right now. Gravity pulls on everything with mass, and light sets a speed for how influence travels. So the universe runs on one set of rules. But connections aren't all the same strength. Some are close and quick, like breath moving between lungs and leaves, or water cycling through cloud and ground and blood. Food chains tie bodies to soil, and ideas pass through language and trade, and those links change us every day. Far connections are weaker and slower, but they're still there in principle. Even in the smallest world, particles can be linked so that a change in one matches a change in another. It doesn't let signals jump across space, but it shows that nature sometimes acts as one thing spread out. So is everything connected? In origin, yes. In law, yes. In influence, it depends on distance, time, and scale. The universe looks like a web with clusters and bridges, not a single thread. Being human is living as one knot in that web, separate enough to think, and held together by the whole. Does awareness need a body? We often picture awareness as a small watcher behind the eyes, but it's more like a field grown by a body. Nerves carry touch and heat. Eyes and ears feed light and sound. And inside, the heart, lungs, and gut send a steady stream of signals. The brain doesn't sit apart from this. It's part of the body, and it learns what the world is by feeling what the body does. We can hear that in simple moments. When we're hungry, the world feels sharper, and when the heart races, thoughts change shape. People who lose a limb can still feel it, because the map of the body is built into awareness. Even in dreams, when the outside world has gone still, the brain builds a scene from memory and from those inner rhythms, so the body still sets the stage. What happens if we strip the body away? In deep anesthesia, when those loops fall silent, awareness fades. In total sensory isolation, it drifts and fractures. So it seems awareness needs a stream to ride on. Could it live in another kind of body? Maybe yes, if something else could give it the same ongoing conversation of signals and action. Because awareness isn't a ghost. It's the way a living system keeps track of itself and the world, and finds itself there. Who or what is asking this question? It feels simple to point and say, it's me, but the me is a moving target. There's a body with senses sending little signals, and there's a brain weaving them into a point of view. The brain builds a model of the world, and it also builds a model of the one looking. That model is what we call the self. It isn't a tiny person inside a head. It's a pattern that updates, second by second, so the story holds together. So who asks? A network of nerve cells that send tiny pulses, shaped by a lifetime of touch and talk and memory, uses language to turn back on itself. The question appears when the model that tracks the world starts to track itself. Words give it a handle, and the handle makes the feeling real. And there's more. This me isn't sealed off. It's threaded through other people, through names and habits and shared ideas. It carries parents' voices and old lessons and hopes for tomorrow. Even the atoms in this body were forged in stars long before there were questions. So the answer is both small and vast. It's a human animal, here and now, asking with a brain that models itself. And it's the universe, arranged in a way that lets matter wonder what it is. What is truth? Maybe truth is the part of a story that would still be there if no one told the story. It's what stays when wishes fall away. A stone is dropped and it falls. So one idea is simple. A claim is true when it matches the world. But minds make pictures and memory bends. Two people can see the same day and disagree. So we need ways to check. Truth grows when we test it from many sides over time, and it keeps making the right bets about what comes next. That's what careful tests are for. Not to make truth, but to catch it. A map is true when it gets a walker from hill to river. If it sends the walker into a lake, it wasn't true. Some truths are local and felt, like pain or love, because they describe a life from inside. They matter, but they don't bend the stars. Other truths are about the world we share, and they hold whether anyone believes them or not. We never have perfect proof, and yet our best truths become steady. They survive new tools and new eyes. They predict eclipses and medicines that heal. They let bridges stand and spacecraft arrive. So truth is the world answering back, and us learning to hear it. Can we trust our senses? It's odd that everything we know begins as a feeling on skin, a pattern of light, a tiny tremor of air. It feels certain, but the brain is guessing all the time, and it stitches a world from those guesses. That's why a stick looks bent in water, and why a shadow can seem like a step. The senses aren't lying. They're simplifying, because speed matters when we're moving through life. So can we trust them? Yes, for the things they were shaped to handle. A hot pan is hot, a dark road is dark, and a friend's face is a friend's face. But the world is bigger than what they catch. We see only a narrow band of light. We hear a thin slice of sound. Color is our brain's way of labeling different wavelengths. And it's useful, but it isn't the thing itself. This is why we built instruments. Telescopes stretch vision. Microphones catch whispers our ears miss. Thermometers don't care about feelings. When senses disagree, we cross-check. When the sun seems to move, we learn that Earth turns. The map gets better, so the answer is careful. Trust the senses for living, but trust shared measurement for knowing. Together they let us stand inside a picture and also reach beyond it. And that's how the world becomes clearer. Do we see the world, or just our idea of it? It's tempting to think the eyes are windows and the world pours in. But light hits the back of the eye and turns into signals, and those signals are noisy. So the brain builds a scene. It finds edges and motion, and it fills gaps, and it assigns color to light, so an apple stays red in shade and sun. And it keeps doing this while the eyes flick and the head moves, so the picture feels steady. This is a kind of guessing and checking. The brain carries a hunch about what's out there, and it compares that hunch with the next flicker of light and sound. When the guess fits, the world feels obvious. When it doesn't, an illusion slips in, or a step is missed, and the guess updates. So do we see the world, or an idea? It's an idea held on a short leash by the world. A map, not the land, that survives only if the mountains are there. Reality pushes back, and that pressure keeps the picture honest. And that's part of being human. The model is shaped by memory and language, so people may stand in the same place and notice different things, yet find the same sun rising. We see with bodies in a universe, and the universe answers. Is logic enough to find meaning? I keep wondering about that, because logic is brilliant at keeping our thoughts straight. It shows when ideas fit and when they don't, and it cuts away the noise. But meaning asks a different thing. It asks what matters to us and why we should care. Logic needs starting points. It can test them, but it can't choose them. If we say well-being matters, logic can help build a life that supports it, but it can't tell us why to pick that aim instead of another. Meaning shows up in experience, in caring for someone, and in work that uses our strengths, and in staring at the night sky and feeling small and connected. Those feelings aren't against reason. They're the signals of value that reason can organize. Our minds evolved to predict and to care, so the two belong together. Reason sharpens our stories, and emotion sets the targets, and action tells us if the story holds. So is logic enough? Not on its own. It's a map without a destination. It can keep us from walking in circles, but it can't tell us where to go. Meaning grows when understanding meets commitment, and it settles in when a pattern of days feels worth living. Logic helps us not get lost, but meaning begins where we choose what's worth finding. Do we create or discover ideas? It sounds like a choice, but it isn't. We do both, and we do them at the same time. Think of numbers. Nobody made up the way prime numbers behave, and yet we had to invent symbols and methods before we could notice them. Or take chess. We set the rules, but the deep strategies turn up like fossils. They're there whether we know them or not. Ideas don't float in a void. They grow where two things meet. One is the world, with its patterns and limits. The other is the human brain, with its habits and hopes. So we invent languages, and then we find truths that language makes visible. We craft tools, and then the tools reveal shapes we couldn't see by hand. It helps to picture a landscape of the possible. We don't choose the mountains, but we can build the paths. Some routes are easy because the ground runs that way. Some are hard because the terrain refuses us. When a path fits the land, it feels discovered. When we lay the stones, it feels created. Most real ideas are both the fit and the stones. That's why an idea feels right when the world pushes back and still holds. We made a handle for something real, and it turns. Why do stories feel truer than facts? Maybe it's because facts sit like points on a map, and stories draw the roads between them. A fact can tell us what happened. A story shows us why it mattered, and what came next, and how it felt. Our minds are built to look for cause and effect, for patterns and aims, because that's how we stay alive in a busy world. So when a story gives us a beginning, a middle, and a sense of direction, it fits the way we think. And there's memory. We don't store perfect records. We rebuild the past each time we remember it, using bits of feeling and meaning as glue. A story gives that glue. It ties a date to a face and a place to a choice, so the pieces hold together. Facts can be sharp, but they can also be lonely. A story lets them belong, and there's prediction. We keep asking, what would I do? What happens if? A story lets us run the world in our heads, safely. We step into someone's shoes for a moment, and we test our own maps against theirs. That test feels like truth. But this cuts both ways. A story can feel right and still be wrong. So stories feel truer than facts because truth, for us, is a shape we can live inside. What makes evidence convincing? I think the moment evidence becomes convincing is when it changes what we bet on, because a claim is cheap, but a test has teeth. When we try to break an idea and it doesn't break, we start to move. It helps when it works again and again. We flip the coin and it keeps landing heads, and then someone else flips it and gets the same thing. So it stops looking like a fluke. And it helps when the result isn't just a story about the past, it points at the future and gets it right. That's when it feels like the world is speaking back. Convincing evidence is also clear about how it was gathered and what could be wrong with it. Because if we can see the cracks, we can judge the shape. And the best kind is joined by other signs that don't share the same weakness. The numbers, the images, the simple observation in a different place, all leaning the same way. We do this in small ways each day. We trust the route that beat traffic 10 times, and we change our mind when the map, the radio, and a friend's call all say the road is closed. So what makes evidence convincing? It survives honest doubt. It predicts. Different signals point the same way, and it leaves us standing in a new place. Why do we need certainty? We reach for certainty because the world keeps moving. A mind needs a stable patch to stand on, or it stalls. Certainty gives that patch. It's a simple claim about what happens next, and that's enough to act. A brain guesses the near future to keep us alive. It guesses where food might be and where danger could come from. When the guess holds, we spend less and move with purpose. When it fails, we hesitate and waste time. So we learn to prefer what's reliable. But certainty also lets groups line up their actions. Clocks, rules, promises, they're shared anchors. With them, strangers can build bridges and share plans. Trust is just certainty about someone else's next move. Here's the twist. Reality never sits still, so our certainty is always a sketch. It's not the world, it's a map for now. Good thinking treats it as provisional and checks again. So why do we need certainty? Because life is short, and choices are many, and we need firm ground to spend our steps well. We need certainty to begin, and uncertainty to keep going. Can not knowing be wisdom? We often think wisdom is having the answer, but maybe it starts earlier than that. Maybe it starts with a clear space where an answer could go, and a mind that's willing to wait, because the world is wider than any neat story, and certainty can make us see what we expect instead of what's there. In science, we do this on purpose. We keep a measure of how sure we are, and that small doubt stops us from locking the door too soon. It lets new facts come in, and it matters in ordinary life. Another person's mind is not a book we can read, so not knowing keeps us curious and kinder and less likely to judge too fast. The future is not a line we can trace either, so not knowing keeps us flexible, ready to change course when the world surprises us. It protects us from the comfort of a wrong story. There's also this. Learning lives at the edge of what we know. That edge needs light, and the light comes from questions that stay open long enough to show us something real. The night sky is full of things we don't yet understand, and that emptiness isn't a failure, it's an invitation. So yes, not knowing can be wisdom, when it holds the space in which truth can appear. Does learning ever end? It's tempting to think learning ends when the exams stop, but it doesn't. The brain never really clocks off. It keeps rewiring. Neurons reach out, and old paths fade, and new ones grow, because that's how experience settles into us. Even when memory slows, the mind is still pattern hunting. It's still testing, noticing, updating. A face, a taste, a mistake, they all shift how tomorrow feels. And there's the world. Knowledge isn't a vault we fill. It's more like a shoreline. As we build it out, the contact with the unknown gets longer. Each answer throws up better questions, and sometimes it shows we were looking the wrong way. We measure a star and find a planet we didn't expect. We study a cell and find it speaks in tiny pulses we hadn't heard. Learning is change you can feel in your own life. You think you know someone, and they surprise you. You think you know yourself, and a hard day, or a kind word, redraws the map. Curiosity is not a phase. It's the mind's way of staying in tune with a moving universe. So does it end? Only if the world stops changing, or we stop paying attention. And the world keeps moving, and we can keep noticing. That's enough to keep learning alive. Why do beliefs feel safer than doubt? Beliefs feel safe because a human brain is built to predict what happens next. When it can't, the body treats that gap like a possible threat, and the heart ticks faster and muscles load up, because the unknown might bite. Doubt holds many futures at once, so the brain has to prepare for more than one path, and that costs effort. A firm belief narrows the future to a single track, so plans line up, and the noise inside falls. There's also the small reward of being right. When the world matches an expectation, the brain drips a little pleasure, and that says, keep this map. Doubt withholds that click, so it can feel cold and unfinished, even when it's honest. And we're social, so safety isn't only inside a head. Shared beliefs are signals of belonging. They say this is our story, these are our rules. Groups that move together can share food and watch for danger, so the person who fits in is safer. Doubt can mark someone as unsure, and distance can grow, and that feels risky. So beliefs offer certainty, control, and company, even when they're imperfect. Doubt opens the door to better maps, but it also opens the door to fear. That's why safety leans toward belief. Is imagination another kind of truth? Maybe imagination isn't the opposite of truth at all. Maybe it's where truth begins. We picture something that isn't there yet, and we ask, what would happen if it were? That picture is a model, not the world, but models can be tested, and that's how ideas grow teeth. Think of a child with blocks. They guess the tower will stand, then it falls, and the guess changes. That's imagination learning from the real world. The same pattern scales up. People worked out black holes on paper before we saw one. We made up numbers that seemed strange, and they turned out to describe how electricity moves. So the mind steps first, and measurement catches up. And it isn't just physics. A city is imagined before it's built. A cure is imagined before it's tried. Even kindness uses imagination because we picture another life, and that picture guides what we do. It's not proof, but it can reveal what matters. And sometimes that's a different kind of truth. Of course, imagination can be wrong. It can draw monsters where there are none. That's why we check. We hold the picture up to the light of experience, and we keep what survives. So is imagination another kind of truth? It's the path to it. And sometimes it's the first glimpse of a place that really exists. Can words trap reality? It's strange that we trust words to hold a world that won't sit still. A word is a small mouthful, and reality is sprawling. So we cut it into pieces and give each piece a name. That helps, because names let us point and share and build. But every label draws a border, and borders leave things out. We call a thing a tree, and we forget its soil and light and water moving through time. Language nudges what we notice. If our words split blue into two shades, we spot the difference faster, and if they don't, we glide past it. That's useful, and it's also a trap because we start to think the borders are in the world rather than in our heads. A diagnosis can guide care, and it can hide the person. A country's line can keep order, and it can make neighbours feel like strangers. Science shows both sides. We coin dark matter to mark a puzzle, and the name holds space for the unknown. But it can also make the unknown sound like a thing we already grasp. We revise words when the world pushes back, like when planet changed and Pluto slipped categories. So can words trap reality? They can trap us. The world keeps spilling past our sentences, and that overflow is where discovery lives. How much of thought is language? We often mistake the voice in our heads for the whole mind. But thought comes in many shapes. A baby reaches for a cup and solves a small problem before any words are there. So thought can move without speech. Language still does a special job. Inner speech lets us hold steps in order, test plans, and talk ourselves through a maze of ifs and maybes. It stretches our short memory because a sentence can carry a long chain that bare feeling can't hold. And we put a thought in words. We can pass it to others and get it back, sharper than before. But much of the mind works in pictures, movements, and feelings. We can rotate a key in our heads or hear a tune and know what comes next. Faces pop out of a crowd without any sentence telling us so. Dreams tell stories with hardly any words. People who lose speech can still reason about maps, and deaf signers think in signs and space, so the code can change while thought continues. Words also tug at what we notice, because names group things and draw lines that guide attention. So how much? A fair slice, for planning and sharing, lives in language, but the mind is larger. Words are the handrail. Thought is the climb. Do facts change minds or feelings? We like to think a fact is a switch, and once it's flipped, the mind turns. But minds live in bodies, and bodies feel first. A feeling checks. Is this safe? Do I belong? What happens if I'm wrong? And the mind often builds reasons to protect that feeling, because identity is warm and change can feel cold. So facts don't fail. They arrive on a landscape. When a fact threatens that landscape, it's a wall. When it fits a hope or softens a fear, it's a door. A number on a page rarely moves a heart, but the first frost that kills the tomatoes can. A graph of risk may mean little, and a doctor showing a scan and a plan can change a life. A statistic about migration is distant, and a friend's story at a table can give that number a face. Trust matters, and time matters, because a mind opens when it feels held, not cornered, and sometimes the feeling shifts first. A birth, a loss, a view of Earth hanging in space. And then the facts line up and make sense. So do facts change minds or feelings? They change minds by touching feelings, and feelings make room for facts to land. That's how ideas move through us, step by step, until the world looks new. Why do we defend old beliefs? Old beliefs feel like home, and there's a reason for that. A belief is a map we carry in the mind because it helps us guess what happens next, and a brain that guesses well stays safer and spends less effort. So when a belief has guided us for years, it's woven into how we see friends, work, and danger. When new facts press against it, there's a jolt. It isn't just an idea at risk. The body tightens and the mind searches for reasons to protect the old map. Because if the map is wrong, where are we? Beliefs also tie us to people. We inherit them through stories and meals and shared days. Letting one go can feel like stepping away from a group or from a younger self who trusted it. We've invested time and pride too, and admitting change can sound like saying those years were wasted, even when they taught us. There's a simpler piece. The brain builds quick paths for old ideas, so they run fast and smooth, while new paths are slow and rough. But we do change. We update when the new map works better, when it predicts more or eases harm. Curiosity helps, and kindness lowers the sense of threat. We defend old beliefs to protect prediction, belonging, and identity, and a mind learns when to loosen its grip. Can curiosity survive certainty? We say we're sure, and then a new question appears. Certainty feels like a full stop, but the world keeps going, so the sentence carries on. Because an answer doesn't erase mystery, it just moves it to the edges. The edges are where curiosity lives. Think of something settled, The Earth orbits the Sun. But how did this system form, and why this path? And could there be worlds not like ours? We learn what gravity does, and then we ask what it is. Each firm step lets the next question be sharper, not weaker. In science, certainty is never absolute. It's confidence that a way of thinking works, here and now. And that confidence is a tool. It frees the mind to look for cracks and to notice surprises. The kettle boils again, and then someone wonders what changes on a mountain, and a new layer opens. It's the same in a life. Being sure of love or of a value can give the courage to explore further. Anchors don't trap a ship. They let it ride out storms and choose when to sail. But when certainty pretends to be complete, curiosity withers because there's nowhere to go. So can curiosity survive certainty? It doesn't just survive, it evolves at the boundary. Answers draw the line, and curiosity walks to its edge and looks beyond. Is truth the same for everyone? It depends what we mean by truth. Some truths are about how the world behaves, and they don't bend to opinions. The earth moves around the sun, and a stone dropped from the hand will fall. Those things are the same for anyone, because the world keeps its rules whether we like them or not. But there's another kind of truth that lives inside experience. What's fair, what's beautiful, what matters most, these need a point of view, so they can't be the same for everyone. Our senses sit between these two. A stick in water looks bent, but it isn't. So the mind builds a picture, and that picture can be wrong, or just incomplete. We correct it by comparing notes, by measuring, by repeating. And when we do, shared truths emerge, even if they were hard to see at first. There's a deeper twist. Time itself can pass at different rates for fast travelers, but the rule that tells how it changes is the same. So even when experience shifts, the pattern underneath holds. So is truth the same for everyone? The facts of the world don't ask for permission, but the meaning of those facts does. We live between them, held by a world that doesn't depend on us, and guided by meanings that do. Does understanding kill wonder? We often worry that if we learn how something works, the magic goes away. But wonder isn't the same as ignorance. It's the feeling that the world is larger than our first glance, and that feeling can grow when the picture sharpens. Take a rainbow. You can say it's just refraction, and the word makes it sound small. Or you can see what that means. Sunlight hits a drop. The light spreads into colors by angle and size. Millions of tiny prisms hang in the air, and your eyes and the sun line up for a moment. You haven't lost the arc. You've gained the gears. The same with stars. Knowing that a star is a sphere of hot gas where hydrogen becomes helium doesn't flatten the night. It links that cold pinprick to the birth of the atoms in our blood. The sky becomes a story with time in it. There is a risk. If we stop at labels, we trade wonder for jargon. But real understanding doesn't stop. It connects a leaf to the sun, a heartbeat to chemistry, a mind to the slow work of evolution, and it shows the scale those links run across. So, no. Understanding doesn't kill wonder. It moves it from the dark into the light, and it gives it room to last. Can knowledge exist without mystery? I don't think they're opposites. Knowledge is the map we draw, and mystery is the land that waits beyond the edge. Without mystery, there'd be nothing to ask, so the map would never grow. And when the map grows, the edge gets longer, not shorter, because the world turns out to be larger than we thought. We learned what stars are, and we didn't run out of wonder. We just found new questions about where they come from and how the first light began. We looked into a living cell, and the parts had parts, and those had patterns. So looking closer didn't finish the story. It stretched it. It's like walking toward the horizon. We move, And the horizon moves too. But mystery without knowledge isn't much use either. It's fog. Knowledge gives it shape. It turns a feeling of not knowing into a clear question, and a clear question into something we can test or explore. That's how wonder becomes work, and work becomes understanding. So, can knowledge exist without mystery? It can exist as a pile of facts, but it loses its direction. The two grow together. We learn, and the unknown becomes sharper, and that's the sign we're alive to the world. Why do we follow rules? It's odd, isn't it, that a few shared ideas can guide millions of strangers? But they do, because rules turn separate choices into a plan we can live inside. Drive on the same side, and cities move. Queue in a shop, and everyone gets served without a fight. So rules make the future a bit more predictable, and that lowers the cost of living together. We didn't invent this from nothing. Groups that coordinated survive better because trust grows when I can guess what you'll do. Our brains notice that. We like belonging, and we fear being pushed out, so reputation matters. Follow the rules, and people trade with you, help you, and let you in. As children, we start by avoiding punishment, but it changes. We copy what we see, and the pattern settles in. It becomes a sense of what people like us do, and it feels wrong to step across it, even when no one's watching. And rules are not all the same. Some keep us safe, some share fairness, some carry values like care and consent. They can clash, so we break one to serve a higher one, like helping someone in danger. They can also change because we test them against what they do to real lives. So we follow rules not to shrink freedom, but to build it together and make room for each other in a crowded world. What makes something fair? Maybe it starts with a simple test. Would I accept the same rule if I swapped places with the other person? If the answer is yes, it begins to feel fair, because the rule isn't built for me, it's built for anyone. We use this when we share a cake, or pick teams, or decide a penalty. Equal splits make sense when people are equal, but when effort or risk is different, we lean towards shares that match what was put in, because that fits the story of what happened. Fairness is also about the way we decide. The rules are known before we play, and they apply the same way to everyone. And when differences are small or uncertain, we use chance, like a coin toss, because chance doesn't take sides. And people get a say, because being heard changes how a decision feels, even when we don't get what we wanted. We feel fairness in our bodies. Someone cuts a queue and we bristle, because we live by cooperation, and broken rules threaten trust. So fairness isn't one number. It's choosing the right rule for the case, choosing it as if any of us could be on either side, and sticking to it. That's how strangers build a life together. Can freedom exist without limits? We picture freedom as open sky with nothing in the way. But if there's nothing in the way, there's nothing to push against, and choice becomes a blur. A violin string makes music only because it's held at both ends, and the held parts don't kill the song, they make it possible. In life, it's like that. A game with no rules isn't free play, it's noise. Language without grammar can say anything, which means it can't say anything clearly. Even a stone drifting in deep space still moves by simple rules, so its path can be known. So, no limits at all isn't more freedom. It's the loss of structure that gives freedom meaning. What matters is the kind of limit. Some close in and crush. Others set a frame. Maps limit wandering to a page so routes can be drawn. Commitments limit options so promises can hold. Values cut away easy paths so a chosen path can be real. That narrowing doesn't shrink a life, it focuses it. So can freedom exist without limits? It doesn't seem so. Freedom shows up inside the right boundaries, where there's room to move, and reasons to choose, and where the edges create shape rather than walls. Why do we obey power? We often say we obey power because we're afraid. That's part of it, but it's not the whole story. We obey because groups need ways to move together. If thousands share a road, a red light is power. It tells strangers how to take turns, and no one has to know anyone else. So rules save us the cost of endless bargaining, and they free us to do other things. We also obey because we read signs of authority, uniforms, badges, big buildings. Our brains use shortcuts. If someone looks like they can coordinate a response, we listen, especially in danger. That bias goes back to small bands where a clear voice meant the hunt worked and the village lived. Fear matters. Punishment and reward push behavior. But belonging matters too. We obey when power feels fair, when the rule seems to protect the many, and when we believe we had a voice. Then power turns into legitimacy, which is really a story we tell together. And there's habit. We fold ourselves around shared expectations because being seen as trustworthy is a need as real as food. So we obey even when no one is watching. In the end, power isn't only over us, it's through us. It holds only as long as enough of us keep granting it. What gives a law meaning? A law starts as marks on a page, and that isn't much. So what turns it into something that matters? It might be the threat behind it, but force only moves bodies, not minds. Meaning begins when a law shapes expectations. A red light isn't just a rule about colour, it's a shared plan for taking turns, so streets work and people feel safe. That's a law doing real work in the world. It also comes from the reason the rule exists. If the why makes sense, people carry it even when nobody's watching. And it comes from who had a say when it was made, because being part of the making gives weight to the words. A law that grows from many voices invites trust, and trust is what lets a rule live beyond the paper. Then there's interpretation. Judges give examples, police use judgment, and ordinary days test the edges. Each case adds shape, so the text becomes a pattern we can learn and predict. If the pattern fits our sense of fairness, it holds. If it only protects power, people withdraw consent, and what's left is fear dressed as order. So a law finds meaning in the why, in the trust it earns, and in the world it builds. It means something when the words meet a life and still feel right. Is morality born or taught? It's a strange question because it feels like both answers are true. We're born with a mind that notices other minds, and it cares. Newborns turn toward voices in distress, and toddlers try to share a snack with someone who's upset. That's the root of empathy, which is just the ability to feel a trace of another's feeling. And even very young children bristle at unfairness. They don't like it when one child gets more for no reason, even if they're the lucky one. So there's a built-in pull toward care and fairness. But what counts as right depends on the world around us. Families and schools and stories teach who belongs, what a promise means, and when to forgive. Rules are passed down, and they can change. The same feeling of fairness can be guided toward different ends, and that's why morals vary across cultures and times. So morality isn't a switch we inherit or a script we copy. It's more like a compass that comes with the body and a map that's drawn by a community. The compass points toward care, fairness, and harm avoided, and the map shows the paths and the borders, born and taught, a direction at birth and a journey learned with others. Why do we punish? It's odd, isn't it? We choose to cause a cost, even when it costs us too. We build courts and prisons, and we give timeouts, and we say this line can't be crossed. Why do we do that? Because we live together, and living together needs trust. If there's no cost for breaking a promise, then the people who cheat get ahead, and the honest lose heart. So groups invent rules, and they add weight to them with consequences. The threat isn't the point, the message is. The rule matters, and everyone sees that it does. There's an older layer as well. We feel anger when harm is done, and we feel the pull of fairness. Punishment takes that hot feeling and turns it into a path we agree on. It can stop revenge from spiraling, because the group says, enough, this is how we answer harm. But the deeper aim isn't pain, it's future. We punish to change behavior, to protect the next moment, to teach what a boundary is. And sometimes the best version looks less like hurting and more like repair. Make the harm clear, make amends, and bring someone back into the circle. So we punish to keep trust alive. And the hope, always, is a world where trust is so strong we hardly need it. Can peace exist without conflict? We tend to picture peace as nothing moving, but living things don't work like that. Because hearts beat and lungs push, and minds hold more than one thought at once. Conflict isn't only war, it's any pull between needs or ideas or ways of living. And if there were none at all, there'd be no choice, no change, and no way to tell peace from a blank. Look at the sky and you see the point. A planet stays in its path because gravity pulls and motion pushes across. So the result is balance, not stillness. Bodies grow stronger for the same reason. A muscle tears a little, and then it heals, and the repair becomes strength. People do this too. A hard talk can sting, and then a repair builds trust that wasn't there before. So can peace exist without conflict? If peace means a world with no differences, that's a kind of desert, safe but empty. But if peace means meeting difference without hate, with fair rules and room to be heard, then it not only can exist, it needs conflict to stay real. Because peace is active. It's a practice. It's how we turn friction into understanding and let many lives share one world. Why do we compete? We race for places and prizes, but what are we really chasing? It begins in a world with limits. Food runs out, days are short, and chances to pass on life are few. Over many generations, bodies and minds that pushed a bit harder left more children. And that drive echoes in us now. We feel it as the pull to be chosen, to be first, to be better than before. But competition isn't only teeth and claws. It's a way a group finds what works. Many try, and the better idea, or the better way to move, rises, and the whole group learns. We're built to compete and to cooperate at the same time, because alone we fail. So we join a side, and the side faces another side, and the contest keeps the fire burning without burning the village. Games do this, and markets and science do this too, with rules that turn rivalry into progress. We also compete with our own past. A runner beats yesterday's time. A student beats last week's fear. In the end, we compete because life is limited and precious, and we're trying to win a place for our future. When it works, the win is bigger than any one person. What makes beauty matter? Beauty matters because it changes what we notice, and attention changes what we do. We're pattern hunters, and beauty is the moment a pattern feels both clear and alive. It's order with a touch of surprise, so the mind wakes up and leans in. That's useful. In a crowded world, we need signals, and beauty is a signal that says there's something here worth understanding. Our brains reward that choice. When shapes balance and colors sit well together, when a melody resolves just so, the brain releases a small yes, and learning sticks. So beauty isn't just decoration. It's a way of steering memory and effort. It keeps us with the problem until the shape of it makes sense. It also helps us live together. Shared taste becomes shared attention, and shared attention becomes trust. A city that looks cared for invites care back. A story told with grace can hold a group in one feeling. even when the facts are hard. And there's another thread. The world often writes itself in simple curves and repeating forms. Leaves spiral, shorelines echo, galaxies sweep. When we meet that echo in art or theory, it feels right because it rhymes with the way nature builds. Beauty matters because it points, it binds, and it moves us to keep going. It teaches love, and love keeps things alive. Why do we build instead of destroy? Maybe it begins with a plain fact. Left alone, things fall apart, and to keep a shape, you have to spend energy. Stars fuse simple atoms into heavier ones. Trees turn sunlight into wood, and we stack bricks into homes. Destruction doesn't need a plan, but making does, so it carries memory. We descend from creatures who survived by making shelters, tools, and maps in their heads. Building stores effort for tomorrow. A roof saves us again and again. A path cut through the grass guides many feet. In groups, the people who made things drew trust and allies because their work helped others, and that kept their children alive. Wreckers face revenge and empty hands. Our brains are tuned to this. There's a small lift when a loose idea clicks into a working thing. When a line becomes a bridge or a recipe becomes a meal. We like patterns that hold, because then the world gets a bit more predictable. Culture multiplies it. Each generation starts on a higher step. We inherit words, tools, laws, and we add a piece because adding is cheaper than starting over. We do destroy at times, but often to clear space for something better. So we build because life leans that way, towards more connection and more future, and because what we make can outlast us. Can equality ever be real? The world is uneven. Bodies, minds, and starting lines aren't the same. Nature doesn't copy and paste, and chance keeps stirring the pot, so perfect sameness is out of reach. If equality means everyone ends up with the same results, then no, it won't hold, because choices and luck pull us apart. But maybe we're asking the wrong thing, because there are kinds of equality. There's equality of outcome, and there's equality of chance, and there's equality of worth. The first is fragile, the second is hard, the third can be real, because it lives in rules we can build. A vote can count the same. A law can apply the same. A doorway can be open to anyone who can walk to it, and we can help those who can't. So equality becomes less a picture and more a tool. We use it to push back on the lottery of birth and the tilt of money and the echo of old history. We level what we can, and we accept that hills remain. It won't be perfect, but it can be true. True in the way a scale that's set right is true, even when the stones differ. Equality is real when we choose it in our systems and in our habits, and we keep choosing it together. Why do we crave leaders? Picture a group at a crossroads. Everyone has a plan and no one moves. Then one person points and the path appears. That's the pull of a leader, and it goes deep. In small bands long ago, danger didn't wait, so decisions couldn't either, and a clear voice turned risk into action. Many minds can see more, but they can also freeze, because each mind leans a different way. A leader works like a drumbeat, so all the oars catch the same water at once. We also crave leaders, because our attention is limited. The world is loud, and it helps to tune to a stronger signal. One face to watch, one plan to try. It lowers the cost of arguing, and it makes the future feel less foggy. And there's something else. We don't just want orders, we want a story. Leaders stitch people into a we, and they point to a horizon that's bigger than any single life. But we're not simple followers. We test leaders, and we bind them with rules, and we share power when we can, because we know how bad it gets when one voice goes unchecked. So maybe we don't crave rulers as much as we crave alignment. We want a way to move together, and a reason that makes moving feel right. What keeps cultures alive? Not monuments or dates on a page, but motion. A culture stays alive because people keep doing it and teaching it and bending it to fit the day. We copy our elders because we want to belong, and we change a little because the world has shifted. And that small mix of memory and invention keeps the pattern breathing. It's less like a statue and more like a recipe that's cooked again, with what's in the cupboard now. How does that work? Through language, because words carry maps of meaning. Through stories, because they pack advice into something we remember. Through shared time, because festivals and daily meals make the rhythm steady so it doesn't fade. And it works through need, because a custom that helps us solve problems or make sense of loss or joy is one we choose again. There's exchange as well. We meet strangers and adopt a tune or a tool, and our way grows a new branch. And that doesn't break it. It makes it tougher. If a culture refuses to move, it becomes a museum piece. If it moves without memory, it dissolves. So what keeps cultures alive? Use and care, repeated today, and openness to change. So tomorrow, it still fits the place we stand. Why does progress feel endless? Maybe it's because every step changes the shape of the next step. We fix one thing, and the fix gives us new power, and that power shows us new gaps. So the path writes itself as we walk. Our brains help with that. We adapt fast. The strange becomes ordinary, and the bar rises without us noticing. What felt far last year becomes the baseline, and the horizon stays out in front, and progress compounds. Tools build tools. A small idea becomes a platform, and the platform lets us see farther, and seeing farther reveals more to do. The island of what we know grows, and its edge with the unknown grows too. There's also the way we live together. We share work, and we share standards, and we can always see someone ahead in one corner of life. So the average day is filled with reminders that there's still more ladder, and there's time. A human life is short, but culture lasts. We inherit unfinished projects from people we never met, and we pass them on. The relay never runs out of track, because the track is the open world. So progress feels endless, not because we're failing, but because the universe is deep, and we are built to keep moving. That's the part that makes the journey worth taking. Why do we create art? We've done this since a hand blew colour around another hand on a cave wall. So the question isn't new, but the answer lives in us. Our brains look for patterns, and art gives patterns that carry feeling and meaning at the same time. It's a way to hold a slice of life still, so we can look at it and understand something that words alone can't carry. Children draw before they can write, because making marks is a first language. And songs arrive even when there's no instrument, because rhythm is how the body counts time. Stories turn danger and hope into shapes we can share, so a lesson survives longer than the person who learned it. That's one reason. Art is memory that outlives memory. But there's more. Art lets a mind meet another mind across distance. A painting is a held breath from years ago. A poem is a thought that learned to stand on its own. Music plays with what we expect, and when it turns, the small surprise feels like discovery, and we feel awake to the world again. We create art to test possible worlds without breaking the real one, and to make company inside the unknown. In the end, it's how private life becomes common ground. Why does power corrupt? Maybe it starts because power changes what a person can do, and it changes what they have to answer for. That shift is small at first, and then it compounds. When there are fewer costs for a mistake, risk feels lighter, so we take it. And when people start saying yes more, feedback gets soft. so our picture of ourselves grows a little larger. Power also creates distance. From higher up, you see the map, but you can miss the faces. Attention narrows to goals and outcomes, and the human story underneath goes out of focus. Our brains like that control too. Getting our way feels good, and small wins give tiny bursts of reward, so the habit strengthens without a speech or a plan. Think of being the one with the keys. You cut a corner to save time. Nothing breaks, and no one complains. Next time the corner is bigger, and it still works, and it starts to feel normal. Other people play along because they need things from you, and flattery sounds like truth if you hear it every day. So a bubble forms, and inside it, our reasons always sound reasonable. Power doesn't plant greed from nowhere. It removes friction and dulls empathy, and it makes self-justification easy. That's why it so often bends good intentions out of shape. What holds a society together? It looks like roads and laws hold it together, but they don't on their own. What really binds us is a web of expectations we carry in our heads. We expect people to stop at the red light and to queue, and because we expect it, we do it. And that makes the rule real. Trust sits at the center. Not perfect trust, just enough to trade, to speak honestly, to plan tomorrow. Money is only paper or numbers, but it works because we believe someone else will accept it later. And we keep that belief alive with small acts. We return a lost wallet. We pay after a meal. We say sorry when we should. Reputation does a lot of the work because we remember and we talk, and that nudges us to be better next time. Law is there as a backstop when trust fails, but most days it's culture that carries us. The stories we tell about who we are, the rituals that mark time, the symbols that point our attention in the same direction. Fairness matters too, because if people think the game is fixed, the web phrase. So, what holds a society together? A shared picture of the future, made solid by everyday promises kept. It's us, choosing to be predictable for one another, again and again. How much suffering is enough? It's a hard thing to measure because suffering isn't a unit like meters or seconds. It's a signal that something matters and it hurts, so we pay attention. A burned finger says, pull away. A broken heart says a bond was real. So one answer is simple and strict. Enough is when the signal is clear, and no more. That fits with how bodies and minds work. A little stress can sharpen focus, but too much drowns thought. Pain helps learning, but beyond a point, it doesn't teach, it crushes. Brains shut down when the load is too heavy, and nothing grows in that storm. So nature gives us alarms, not targets. The alarms should ring, and then they should stop. There's also meaning. Suffering can be turned into care because it shows where life is tender. It can link strangers, and it can move us to change unfair systems. But that doesn't make suffering good in itself. It means the good is in the response, not in the hurt. So how much is enough? The least that lets us notice what's wrong, protect what matters, and act. It will differ by person and moment, because bodies and stories are different. But the direction is steady. Keep the signal, lose the excess. And whenever we can, choose a world where understanding stays, and needless suffering doesn't. Will humanity ever agree on what's good? We want one small word, good, to hold billions of lives. And that's a lot to ask. Across Earth, we tell different stories. We eat, marry, worship, and punish in different ways. So it feels like agreement is impossible. But when lives depend on each other, certain patterns appear. Hunters share because tomorrow it's their turn. Traders keep promises because trust makes the market work. Parents care for children because our future depends on it. Even very young children notice help and harm. So there are threads that show up again and again. The trouble is, good sits on top of different risks and memories. If a place is fragile, people prize order. If a place is wide and rich, people prize freedom. And groups protect their own, because that's how groups survive. So we clash on means while still chasing similar ends, like safety, fairness, and a chance to live well. Will we ever agree? If agreement means one perfect rule forever, probably not. But if it means a growing overlap, then yes. Shared problems on a small planet pull us together. Clear facts reduce fear. Wider circles of concern come with travel, trade, and hearing more voices. So good isn't a fixed star we find once. It's a direction we learn to walk in, and we walk it better together. What is the self? Each morning we open our eyes, and there's that familiar sense of being someone. It feels solid, like a thing we carry, but it's more like a living process. The brain is taking in the body, the world, and our memories, and it's stitching them into a point of view. So, the self isn't sitting in one place. It's what happens when all these signals line up and say, "This is me." We know this because it changes. After an accident, a person can wake with a different taste, a different mood, even a different sense of who they are. And over years, our bodies swap out atoms, our habits shift, our beliefs grow. Yet there's a thread that feels unbroken. That thread is memory and expectation working together. A quiet story about where I came from and where I'm going. It helps to think of the body as the anchor. The brain keeps a map of the heart, the lungs, the skin, and it ties feelings to that map, so the world has a center. Names and roles then build on top, like layers in a painting. In one room, we're a friend. In another, a parent. At work, a colleague. And the core keeps adapting. So the self is real as a pattern, not as a thing. It's the ongoing act of a living brain finding a steady I in a changing world. Are mind and body one? It's easy to imagine a line between them, as if thoughts live in a private room and the body waits outside. But when a heart races, ideas speed up. When hunger arrives, plans change. A fever bends dreams, so the border wobbles. The brain is flesh. It runs on tiny pulses and chemicals, and those flows are shaped by signals from skin, gut, muscles, and the rhythm of breath. Neurons don't think alone. They listen to the body and to the world, and from that listening, a mind appears. Call it a pattern, not in one spot, but spread across brain and body through time. A small injury to the brain can shift a whole personality, and a dose of adrenaline can turn fear into action. Even posture and breath can tilt mood and focus. The traffic goes both ways. So are they one? Not in the sense that a thought is a muscle, but they're not two separate things either. They're one process seen from two angles. From the outside, it's cells firing and bodies moving. From the inside, it's meaning and feeling. Change the body and the mind moves. Change the mind and the body learns. That loop is the place we live, and calling it one isn't a slogan. It's a simple way to say what's true from both sides. Why do we feel emotion? It's odd that feelings can lift us or knock us down. Why would a brain build something like that? Because life moves fast and thinking is slow. Emotions are quick judgments about what matters now. They line up the body and the mind to act. Fear tightens muscles and shifts blood, so legs move before thought. Anger locks attention on a barrier, so we push back. Joy widens our view, so we explore and share. Sadness narrows it, so we rest and ask for help. But they aren't only for action. They're also for learning. Strong feeling stamps a memory, so the lesson stays. Touch a flame once, and the trace keeps us safe. And feelings let groups work like one. Laughter tells others it's safe, and tears call care. Under it all, a feeling is the brain reading the body and the scene. Heartbeats, breath, hormones, hunger, the room, and the story we expect. It stacks the clues and says yes or no, approach or avoid. It can be wrong, but it's trying to keep us going. So we feel emotion because living needs a fast guide, not just careful thought. Why does pleasure fade so fast? Sometimes the best moments vanish as soon as they arrive, and we wonder why the good feeling slips away. The brain is built to notice change, not steady walls of sensation, because change carries news. So when something good happens, nerves fire hard, and a burst of reward chemistry rises, and the system says this matters. Then it settles. The same signal repeated stops being news, so the response shrinks. That's adaptation, and it keeps us from getting stuck. There's also a reason shaped by survival. Pleasure is a marker that a need was met, not a place to live. If it didn't fade, we'd stop looking for food, or friends, or shelter, and we'd miss the next chance. Pain hangs on longer because it protects us from harm, but pleasure lets go so we can move. You can feel this in a simple bite. The first taste is bright, and the 10th is just food. New love roars, and then it softens into trust and habit, which is different and often deeper. The thrill drops, but the meaning can grow. So pleasure fades fast because it's a spark for learning. We chase, we adjust, we carry the lesson, and we make room for the next bright thing. What creates desire? It often begins with a gap. The body notices that something is missing, and signals rise, and the mind starts to search. Hunger is one kind, thirst is another, but the same pattern stretches wider into touch, recognition, and new ideas. Inside the brain, there's a small push that marks opportunity. It comes from a chemical nudge we use for learning, often called dopamine, and it doesn't hand us pleasure. It points and says, try there. Because the brain is always guessing the next moment, it builds a picture of what could fill the gap, and it tags the steps that might get us closer. Memory shapes the picture. A smell brings back a meal. A street recalls a first kiss, and the old feeling becomes a path we can take again. And we watch other people. When faces light up at a prize, that glow becomes part of our map, so we want what seems to matter in our group. Desire also grows from novelty. The unknown promises a lesson, and our minds are drawn to it because learning kept our ancestors alive. So desire is not just need, it's the pull of a possible future. It creates motion. We lean toward what could be, and in that leaning, we make a life. Why do we fear being forgotten? It's strange that a mind can worry about a time when it won't be here, but the feeling is older than that. We're built for tribes, and being remembered kept us alive, because the group shared food and warning and care. If no one held you in mind, you were outside the circle, and that was dangerous. So the fear isn't silly, it's an old survival alarm, but there's more. Who we are doesn't live only inside our skulls. It lives between us, in names and faces, and the roles we play. A parent, a friend, the person who made that song, or fixed that broken thing. When others remember us, our story keeps moving, even when we can't carry it ourselves. We fear being forgotten because it feels like the story ends twice. So we try to leave marks. We make things and raise children and teach skills and tell stories. Most names fade after a few generations, and that's hard to accept, but the changes we set in motion don't vanish. A kindness becomes a habit in someone else. A solved problem saves time for a stranger. Those ripples pass to people who never knew our name. Maybe the fear is a guide. It turns us toward connection and work that outlasts our hands. We fear being forgotten because we're built to belong, and belonging is how a life continues. Can happiness exist without pain? I keep coming back to a simple thought. Happiness feels bright, but what would bright mean if nothing were dim? The brain doesn't measure absolute levels, it notices change. Joy shows up as a rise from what we're used to, and our baseline shifts all the time. If life was smooth with no rough bits at all, constant pleasure would fade into the background, because that's how we adapt. So without any pain, would happiness even register as happiness? But happiness isn't only the opposite of pain, it's connection and purpose, and doing something well. Those can appear without suffering, yet they usually sit next to effort, uncertainty, and the real risk of loss. Thirst makes cold water astonishing. A hard practice turns into music in the hands. Waiting on a platform turns into a rush when a familiar face appears. These aren't grand agonies, but they give joy its shape. We don't need to seek harm to feel alive. We need contrasts and stakes and the knowledge that things could be different. Pain can carve the space that joy later fills, and it reminds us that moments are precious because they pass. So can happiness exist without pain? As a flash of feeling, yes. As something we understand and truly value, it seems to need edges. What is love? We use one word as if it's simple, but it's a whole pattern in a life. It's a change in what counts as me, because another person gets folded into our sense of self. The brain tags them as part of home, and the body shifts to keep them safe, as if it were keeping us safe. It starts in biology, and that doesn't make it small. Tiny signals move between nerves and blood, and they teach attention to return to the same face. Touch slows the heart. Memory links their voice to relief. Hormones help trust and care, and their tools evolved for a task that mattered, because love kept newborns alive, and it kept pairs near enough to share work, and it bound friends so groups could survive hard winters. It let stories travel farther than any one body. So it began as a strategy, and it grew into a way of seeing, and in a single life, it's the moment we plan a future, in plural. It's worry that is willing, an effort that doesn't feel like cost. It's noticing detail and staying when it's not easy, and choosing again. Maybe that's the heart of it. Love is attention that becomes commitment, shaped by biology, widened by culture, lived as meaning. And it feels vast, because it makes a self larger. Why do we dream? The brain never really powers down, and when the world goes dark, it turns inward. There's a stage called REM, when our eyes flicker and the body stays still, and the brain is almost as active as daytime. In that light, it starts stitching, because the day leaves scraps. A face, a worry, a new skill. The brain tries to put them back in better order, so dreams help store what matters and loosen what hurts. We replay the day, and feelings soften because they're run in a safe theatre. That's why fear visits odd scenes, and a problem can feel lighter in the morning. Brains are prediction machines, and in dreams, they test moves without risk. It isn't nonsense. It just isn't tied to the usual rules, so scenes can bend while the work continues. And sometimes that freedom lets new ideas appear, because links we'd ignore when awake can meet at last. So we dream, because a storytelling brain needs rehearsal and repair. In the dark, it keeps us ready for the next day, and sometimes for a life we haven't seen yet. Do we have free will? When we ask if we have free will, we're really asking what a choice is. The world runs on causes. Push a thing, and it moves. Our brains are part of that world, made of cells and sparks, shaped by genes and days. So where could freedom live? It lives in the way the brain gathers the world, holds memories, imagines futures, and lets reasons weigh on each other. That slow weighing is a cause too, but it's a cause that belongs to us. Sometimes the brain starts preparing a move before we notice, and that sounds like a trick, but it makes sense. A choice is built from many small steps, and awareness is one of them. We can feel an impulse and stop, or wait, or pick a better time. We learn from mistakes, and the next time we aim a little truer. That's not magic. That's a system shaping itself. Randomness wouldn't help, because a roll of the dice isn't a will. What matters is that the decision flows from who we are, when no one is forcing us, and we can give reasons we can stand by. We don't stand outside nature, we stand inside it, and still we make plans and keep promises. So do we have free will? We have a will that is free enough to matter, because it's ours. Why do we seek purpose? Maybe we look for purpose because we can look ahead. Most animals feel the next moment, but a human mind can run the film forward and then ask, what is all this for? When a brain can imagine many futures, it needs a way to choose, so it draws a line through them and calls it a goal. That line is purpose. Purpose is useful. It keeps a group moving together, and it turns random effort into a plan. A hunter can wait for days because there's a reason to wait. A builder can lift the same stone again and again because the wall will stand. The brain even gives a glow when steps take us closer, so progress feels good. We also tell stories, and stories need direction. So we set a why behind the what, and that gives shape to our days. It helps in hard times, because pain is easier to bear when it belongs to a path, not to chaos. We know life is short, and that knowledge can press on the chest. Purpose lets a small act point beyond one life, into family, work, art, or care. The universe doesn't hand out meaning. Stars burn and cool without a plan. So we're the ones who thread meaning through events, and in doing that, we become the kind of creatures who can walk toward a horizon. Is suffering necessary for growth? I think about how living things change when the world pushes back. Muscles grow when we load them, and minds change when a result surprises us because the brain rewires to fit the facts. But not every change needs suffering. There's a difference between stretch and damage, between effort and harm. A run that leaves us breathless can build endurance, but a broken leg doesn't teach us to run. The immune system learns by meeting small threats, not by being overwhelmed. Children grow through play and mistakes because the stakes are light and the feedback is clear. Deep pain can also reshape us. Loss can strip away what's pretend, and crisis can show what we value. It can lead to wisdom, but it's a blunt teacher, and it isn't fair, and sometimes it doesn't teach at all. Sometimes it just hurts, and it closes us. So is suffering necessary for growth? I don't think so. What's necessary is contact with the real in doses we can survive, and space to reflect, and support to try again. Curiosity can pull us forward as strongly as hardship pushes. We don't have to seek pain, we can seek stretch. And when pain does arrive, we can decide to make something from it and carry that forward. Why do we feel guilt? Guilt is a knot in the chest, and it's a clue to something deep. We live together, and that's hard, because our desires can pull against each other. So the mind grew a signal that says stop, notice, repair. It's like an inner hand on the shoulder when we've crossed a line. Not to punish us forever, but to pull us back into the group. It works by letting us run the world in our heads. We replay what happened, and we imagine how it felt on the other side. And the weight grows until we act. We apologize. We fix the thing we broke. We change the plan next time. That's costly in the moment, but it protects something bigger: trust. And trust lets villages and cities and whole strangers build a life together. There's a difference worth holding. Guilt says, I did a wrong thing. Shame says, I am the wrong thing. One lifts our eyes to the person we hurt so we can mend the bridge. The other can swallow us, and it doesn't help much. It isn't perfect. It can be too strong or too weak, and cultures tune it in different ways. But the heart of it is simple. Guilt is the ache that keeps us honest about each other. What makes something right or wrong? There aren't labels in the universe that say right or wrong. Rocks and stars don't care, but we do, because we can feel and imagine. We live together, and our lives tangle, so our choices spill into each other. When an action causes needless harm, breaks trust, or closes futures, it feels wrong because it makes shared life worse. When it protects, helps, keeps promises, and grows trust, it feels right because it makes shared life work. Our brains catch a bit of another's pain, so harm stings more than numbers. And we remember, so we need trust to plan. We also compare, so we notice when rules tilt to one side, and we call that unfair. That sense isn't perfect, but it's a start. Cultures draw lines in different places, but the pull is similar, toward less harm, more fairness, stronger trust, and care for those most at risk. We argue the details as we learn more, and as our circle widens to strangers in the future. One test helps. Could everyone touched by a choice understand the reason, even if they don't like it? If a reason serves a few while many pay the price, we tend to call it wrong. So right and wrong aren't written into nature, but they aren't random. They grow from being us, feeling creatures who must share a world. Can humans live without illusion? I think the more carefully we look, the more we notice we never see the world raw. The brain guesses, then fills the gaps, and it does it so fast it feels like truth. A straight stick looks bent in water. Colours don't sit in light. They live in us. And memories lean toward the story we're already telling. So can we live without illusion? Probably not, because a mind has to compress reality to keep up. It throws away most of what's out there and keeps a model that's good enough to act. That model is useful, but it's an illusion in the simple sense that it isn't the thing itself. But that isn't a failure. It's a strategy. Some illusions harm us, that we're always right, that the group we belong to is pure, that the future owes us. We can loosen those by measuring, by asking others. Some illusions help. Confidence before a hard task. The story of a self that stays the same so we can plan. They're scaffolds, and we can keep them light so they move when reality moves. Maybe the aim isn't zero illusion, but transparent illusion. Know it's a model. Test it. Change it. Leave room for surprise. That way, we live close to truth and still carry the stories that let us go on. Why do we create art that hurts? Some of the things we keep close make us ache, and that's strange. A song that pulls the throat tight. A film that breaks a heart we know will mend. So why do we reach for pain on purpose? Because hurt inside a frame is different from hurt in the wild. We can step in and we can step out, and that distance lets us look. It's like holding a thorn with tweezers. We get near enough to learn without being torn apart. And pain teaches. Bodies remember feelings better when they come with a story. So sorrow in a melody, or grief in a painting, sticks. It shows us how storms move through a mind, where they start, how they pass. We rehearse the hard parts of life while we're safe, and practice makes us steadier. when the real thing arrives. We also make it for each other. When someone pins their hurt to a canvas or a page, they turn it into something shareable. The load spreads. A lonely feeling finds company, and the room gets lighter by a small but honest amount. And there's meaning. Raw pain is noise, but shaped pain can point. It can warn or witness or honor what mattered. That's why we make art that hurts. It turns suffering into a map we can walk with. Is memory the same as identity? It's tempting to say yes, because when we explain who we are, we reach for memories. We tell a story of schools and birthdays and places, and it feels like the self is woven from that. But memory is patchy, and it's rebuilt each time we recall it, and most of our days fade, yet we still feel like the same person. So something else must be holding the shape. Babies don't have long memories, but they have a temperament and preferences and a way of being held that calms them, and that's already a kind of self. And people who lose many memories often keep a voice, a walk, a laugh, a sense of kindness or stubbornness. Skills can stay when stories don't, because the brain stores them in different ways. So identity can survive even when memory thins. It helps to see identity as a pattern across time. Its habits, values, tastes, the body and the brain, and the relationships that mirror us back. Memory feeds that pattern, because it lets us compare today with yesterday and aim for tomorrow. But it isn't the whole thing. So memory and identity aren't the same. Memory is a bridge we keep repairing, and identity is the traveler that keeps crossing, step by step, becoming real by going on. Why does beauty move us? Sometimes a view stops the day, and it's hard to say why. A face, a chord, a line of light on water. We call it beauty, but what is it doing to us? The brain is a prediction machine, and it's always guessing what comes next. It likes patterns because patterns let it guess, and it likes surprise because surprise means it learned. Beauty sits between the two. Too much order is dull, and too much chaos is noise, but in between there's a sweet place. When a shape or a melody or a sentence lands there, many systems fire together. Sight and sound join emotion and memory, and the body gives a warm yes. Some of this began in survival. Symmetry can hint at health, and rhythm can hint at safety, and a rich landscape can hint at food and shelter. But beauty goes further than that, because the same machinery feeds on meaning. It rewards the moment when parts become a whole. A chord resolves and time makes sense. A painting links space into a story. A proof ties ideas and we feel the knot hold. So beauty moves us because it's the signal of deep fit. It tells us the world is larger than us and still knowable. And for a breath, mind and universe seem to agree. Can awareness see itself? There's a simple puzzle here. The eye can see everything in the room, but it can't look at itself without a mirror. So is awareness like that too? We use it to notice colors and sounds and thoughts, and we use it to notice that we're noticing. That second step feels special because it's the mind turning inward. And it isn't magic, because the brain builds models of the world and it also builds a small model of itself. That's how we can think about thinking and know that a thought just happened. But awareness isn't a thing with edges. It isn't a shape or a color we can point to, because it's the open field where all shapes and colors show up. So it can't be seen the way an object is seen. What it can do is reveal that it's present. When attention stops chasing the next thing, there's still the plain fact that experience is happening now. No picture, no object, just the sense of being here and knowing that we are. So, can awareness see itself? Not as an image in a mirror and not as a separate thing. It knows itself by the light it throws on everything else, and by the quiet certainty that the light is on. Why do we keep imagining eternity? Start counting, and there's never a last number, and once that's in the mind, it's hard to forget. The horizon does the same trick. We walk toward it, and it keeps moving, so we learn that some things don't end, they just open. The brain is built to run ahead and to look back, because planning and memory helped us survive. And when a mind can picture tomorrow and yesterday, it soon asks what lies beyond both. We know we're finite, and that knowledge stings, so we try to set our small life inside a bigger frame. We call that frame eternity. The night sky helps. Starlight is old when it reaches us, and we sense a depth of time we can't hold. So we test the idea in stories and art, with promises and names carved in stone, because we want love and meaning to last longer than we do. Numbers offer a clean version of it, and space offers a visible one, and grief offers a human one, so the thought keeps returning. Maybe eternity isn't a place, but a tool. It lets us think past the edge of our maps. It pushes our questions further out, and it comforts, not by denying our limits, but by giving them a horizon we can walk toward, again and again. What happens when we die? We ask it because it touches two places at once: the body we can measure and the experience we live from. The heart stops, blood no longer feeds the brain, and brain cells fall silent. The network that makes a mind can't hold together. So the stream of experience ends. From the inside, that isn't a long dark tunnel. It's simply the absence of any more moments. It's like before we were born, not a place, just no time for us at all. But matter doesn't end. The atoms that were arranged as us go back to air and soil and light. Heat flows out, water returns to the world, and those elements ride the wind and the rain. They were forged in stars long before us, and they'll join other stories long after. And something of us carries on in patterns, not as a ghost, but as ripples we set moving, like a child with our genes, or a friend who shares a story we once told, or a small change in someone's day, because we were kind or difficult. The world is slightly different because we were here. So what happens when we die? The inner movie stops, the matter continues, and the effects of our time keep working through the lives around us. Is death an end or a change? It's strange that one event can feel like a wall and a doorway at the same time. A living person is a pattern that holds together for a while. Its chemistry and tiny electrical pulses arranged in a very exact way, and that arrangement makes a point of view. When that pattern breaks, the experience stops. There isn't a place where it goes, because the thing that would go is the pattern itself. So for the person, it's an end. But the world doesn't lose anything. The matter and energy don't vanish. They move. Heat drifts into the air. Atoms return to soil and water. They join plants and animals, and, in time, other people. These atoms were made in stars long before we were born, and they'll be part of new stories we'll never see. And there's another kind of change as well. Choices we made keep unfolding in other lives. Words, habits, skills, kindness, or harm, they continue as ripples. Genes carry fragments of us, but so do ideas and tools and the work our hands began. So is death an end or a change? It's both, depending on where we're looking. It's the end of a viewpoint, and it's a change in the wider pattern that gave rise to it, and keeps going. Why do we fear the inevitable? There's a strange thing about certainty. When something must happen, it should settle us, but it rarely does. Our minds are built to predict and steer, and we stay alive by choosing, by turning the wheel a little. The inevitable removes the wheel, and that makes the warning system flare. We can't fight the tide, and we don't know the shape of each wave. So the brain keeps asking what if, And it keeps the body ready, because readiness once saved our ancestors. But there's more than biology. We're woven out of habits and roles and names, and inevitables change them. Time will move. Parents will die. We will leave places we love. We fear that not just because it ends, but because we can't picture the middle. The when and the how are hidden, and the unknown is where worry breeds. And strangely, fear points to value. We don't fear the forgettable. We fear what matters, because losing it would tear the pattern we live inside. That sting is also a light. It shows us what to hold and what to finish and who to stand beside while we can. So we fear the inevitable because we're creatures of choice and care in a world of time. The fear is a sign that life is real and that it's ours to spend. Would immortality ruin meaning? We often think meaning needs an ending, like a story that works because it stops. And it's true, a deadline sharpens the day because we can't do everything, so we choose. But meaning isn't only a race against the clock, it's attention and care, and the shape we give to time. If we lived forever, would that vanish? Not really, because even endless life has limits. We still can't be in two places at once, and our minds can hold only so much, and every yes still costs 1,000 no's. So choice would still cut a path. The world would keep ending around us anyway. Stars burn out, mountains fall, friends change. Things wear down, and that gives edges to our days, even if we don't. Immortality might dull urgency, though. With no final date, we could drift, because tomorrow always waits. So meaning might move. It would lean less on fear of loss and more on vows we make. We'd need seasons we choose, projects with endings, promises that bind us, not because time forces them, but because we do, and we already do this. We live several lives in one life, and we start again with new work, new love, new ideas. So would immortality ruin meaning? It wouldn't. It would shift it, from running out of time to deciding what's worth a lifetime. Can time exist without change? We say time is passing, but what tells us that? It's the stream of change. Hearts beat, shadows move, atoms tick. If nothing changed at all, could time be there? In our equations, there's a symbol T that can grow, even if nothing else does. So, on paper, you can let time run while the universe sits still. But that's bookkeeping, and clocks don't live on paper. A clock only works because something repeats. A pendulum swings, an atom flips between levels. Your brain lays down a memory. If absolutely nothing changes, no clock can tick, and there's no way to tell one moment from another. Even the arrow we feel comes from change. Heat spreads, cups smash, smoke doesn't gather back up. That drift we call entropy points us from past to future. If that drift stopped everywhere, the arrow would vanish. And if the universe had no events at all, time would be like a road with no signs, the same stretch copied forever. So can time exist without change? Maybe as an idea, yes, but not as a thing you could ever notice. For beings like us, time is the shape of change. We know we're alive because the world moves through us, and we move through it, and the story keeps turning. Does the universe repeat? It's an old thought. If time is long enough, do things come back around? In our observable universe, the answer looks like no, because the cosmos is expanding faster and faster, and disorder grows, so the future drifts away from the past. There are ideas about a universe that cycles, with bangs following crunches, but the evidence we have points to one long expansion, not a loop. But space itself might be endless, and the rules are simple and limited. So, in an infinite expanse, every possible arrangement could appear somewhere. That would mean a region very much like this, and perhaps one that matches it almost exactly, unimaginably far away. It's a real possibility, but it isn't something we can test, because light can't cross that distance. So does the universe repeat, the laws repeat, the ingredients repeat, and patterns echo across scale. Stars are born and die and seed new stars, and the same atoms are used again and again. Some of those atoms sit in a tree today and in a person tomorrow, and the story goes on. And yet each moment is a fresh arrangement, shaped by chance and history, and it won't happen in this place again. That feels like the truth of being human in a vast universe that rhymes, but doesn't rewind. Is there purpose beyond us? It's natural to look up and wonder if all this is for something. The stars don't make promises, and rocks don't explain themselves, but the universe does show a pattern. Matter falls together, and simple things join to make complex things. And in some places, that gives rise to life. None of that needs a plan. It just follows the way the world is, where energy flows and structures grow because they can. So what do we mean by purpose? A heart has a job, but it never chose it. It beats because of how it formed. Life looks goal-driven, but it's shaped by many small steps that worked and stayed. Purpose, the kind we feel, seems to need a point of view. It needs a mind that can ask, what's worth doing? Beyond us, there are laws and patterns, not intentions. But those patterns can make minds, and minds can hold aims. That might be the only place purpose can live. And that doesn't make it small. It means our meanings are part of the same story that forged carbon in stars and carried it into brains that can care. So, is there purpose beyond us? There's a wider process without a plan, and we're the part that can choose one. Will everything end or begin again? It helps to start with what we see now. The universe is expanding, and it's speeding up, driven by a push in empty space we call dark energy. If that keeps going, then galaxies drift apart, stars burn out, and matter falls into black holes. And even those fade, very slowly, into a thin mist of light. In that picture, the story doesn't end with a crash. It just grows cold and sparse, until there isn't enough energy in one place to make anything new. But there are other ideas. Space might not be the whole of reality. New universes could bud off like bubbles, born from tiny quantum ripples. Or a deep theory might turn the bang into a bounce, where collapse leads to another beginning. We don't know which, and that uncertainty is honest, because we're still learning what space and time really are. So what do we hold on to? That everything we love exists because the universe changes. Stars end, and heavy atoms begin. Lives end, and new lives begin. Endings and beginnings aren't opposites. They're two faces of the same flow of time. Will everything end or begin again? It may end here and begin elsewhere, or simply fade. But the greater truth is that change keeps making room for moments like this one. Does meaning survive death? I think about how meaning shows up in the first place. It isn't a thing floating in the air. It's a pattern in minds and in actions. It lives in aims and stories and the ties between us. So when a person dies, that private point of view ends, and the feelings stop. But the patterns they shaped don't end at the same moment, because causes keep running. A teacher explains an idea, and it sits in a student's head, and it goes on to build something. A parent sings a song, and years later, that tune steadies a grown child on a hard day. An engineer leaves a bridge, and strangers cross a river and meet. Small kindness changes a choice, and that choice reshapes a life. Meaning moves along those lines, because meaning is what those lines are for. And there's the deeper view. Once a life has happened, it becomes part of the history of the world. The past doesn't vanish when we stop looking. It fixes how the present can be. And that can't be undone. Even if every memory fades, the path was taken, and the universe now contains that fact. So does meaning survive death, not as a ghost of thought, but as ripples in people and things, and as a real chapter in the story that can't be unwritten. What is nothing? We say nothing when there's no thing, but the more we look, the harder it is to find. An empty cup looks like nothing, and then we notice the air and the light and heat drifting through it. Take the air away and call it a vacuum, and it still isn't bare. Space has fields spread through it, like invisible fabric, and they never sit perfectly still. Tiny flickers appear and vanish because there's a rule that stops energy being pinned to exact zero, so emptiness borrows and pays back in a breath. So, if we strip the universe of matter, light, and dust, we're left with space itself, and space has shape. It can stretch and ripple, and that means the plainest background is already a kind of something. Even the number 0 is like this. It doesn't mean a hole in reality. It's a mark we use to count the absence of apples or stars, and the mark is still a thing in our minds. Maybe that's the key. Nothing isn't a place. It's a boundary in thought, defined by the things we imagine taking away. And when we reach it, we find possibility waiting there, because rules and space remain to carry whatever could be. So nothing, at its deepest, is the stage where something can begin. Why does existence feel miraculous? There's a moment when you stop and think, I'm here, and the thought feels bigger than the room. It feels miraculous because we are rare. Not rare across the whole cosmos, which is vast, but rare in a life, because each of us gets one path, and it's unlikely in detail. We're the kind of matter that knows it exists, and that's a strange property to carry. Think of the story. Simple atoms formed, stars burned and made heavier atoms. Dust turned into planets. Water pooled and chemistry began to copy itself. Errors made variety, and variety learned to survive, and minds grew from that long chain. None of it needs magic. Simple rules, given time and space, make complexity. But inside a mind, that chain collapses into a single breath, so it feels like a jump. There's also the numbers we feel, not calculate. If you list the chances of parents meeting, and their parents, and every event that led here, it looks impossible. In a big universe with many tries, some paths will happen. But for the one who walks a path, it still feels like winning the biggest lottery. And we can picture nothing, so something hits harder. Presence beats silence in the mind. Existence feels miraculous because the universe is steady enough to make minds, and minds are open enough to be astonished by that simple fact. Is hope rational? We usually treat hope like a feeling, but it's also a choice about the future. When we say we hope, we're saying there's a chance worth taking, and we might play a part in it. Rational doesn't mean certain. It means our view fits what we know, and it helps us choose well. Blind hope ignores facts and it breaks, but informed hope looks at the odds and at something else we often forget. Our actions change the odds. A student studies because she hopes to pass, and her hope makes the passing more likely. A team keeps searchlights on through the night because hope holds them there, and sometimes that's the hour when someone calls back. History gives reasons to hope. Children once died of infections we now stop with a shot. Rivers once ran black and now run clear because laws and work followed hope. Not every try works, but many do, and the world carries those gains forward. Hope isn't a promise. It's permission to act before the result is visible. It says there's a path, and if we walk it, the future bends a little. So hope is rational when it's honest about risk and tied to effort. It's the light we carry so our hands can find the next step. What does peace really mean? We say peace is the opposite of war, but that feels too small. War is a thing that happens, and it stops. And then what? Peace isn't an empty space. It's a set of conditions where life can get on with living. Inside a person, it's when the body isn't stuck in alarm. The heart still beats. Thoughts still race sometimes. We still argue and worry. But the threat system isn't steering every choice. Because there's safety enough to try things. There's trust enough to make mistakes and fix them. Between people, it's similar. Differences don't vanish. They're handled. There are rules that feel fair and doors that open when harm is done, so repair can happen. A truce without justice is only a pause. It holds its breath and then it breaks. Nature shows the pattern. Rivers flood, storms arrive, and yet there are stable banks and seasons that hold. Peace isn't the end of weather. It's a climate that lets storms pass and growth return. So, it's not a mood, and not just the sound of nothing happening. It's capacity. It's the shared strength to absorb shock without snapping. It's the room to plan next week. It's the chance to imagine a longer future and to make it real. Is consciousness shared? I don't think we share a single mind, but something unusual happens when minds meet. Consciousness feels private. It's the sense that there's a world inside, and only I can feel my pain and my hope. That privacy seems solid, because no one can look out through my eyes from the inside. But there's a middle ground. Brains are built in company, and they stay that way. A baby's mind grows by copying voices and faces, and language lays tracks that thoughts run on. When people talk, their timing starts to line up, and their brain rhythms can sync for a while, so they build the same picture of what matters now. In a crowd, laughter spreads, and bodies sway to a beat, and hearts speed up together. We don't merge, but we coordinate. So part of what I call me was given by others. The words I think with, the stories I use to judge a day, the habits of care and fear. My inner life is mine, but its tools and its weather are shared. Is consciousness shared? Not like a hive that fuses minds, but like a field where private lives meet and shape each other. It's private at the center and connected at the edges, and that's enough to feel less alone. Can nothing create something? It seems simple, but it turns on what we mean by nothing. If we clear a room of air, dust, light, and heat, we still have space and time, and the rules that tell things how to behave. Even in empty space, those rules let tiny flickers appear and vanish. Little flashes of energy pop in and out so fast they barely count, and that's why empty space isn't truly nothing. So we try a deeper nothing. No particles, no space, no time, no rules. Now the question bends, because create assumes a before and after, and that only makes sense when time exists. If there's no time, there isn't a before in which nothing could do anything. Some ideas in physics show how a universe could appear when the total adds up to zero, with positive energy balanced by gravity's negative pull. That would mean the bill is paid, so a cosmos could bloom without breaking a rule. But notice what's doing the work there. It's the rules. And if there are rules, we're not talking about absolute nothing. So can nothing create something? With real nothing, the question fades. With almost nothing, the rules can. And maybe that's the deeper mystery. Not how things began, but why there are rules at all. Why does awareness return after sleep? It seems strange that it ever goes away, and stranger that it comes back so easily. But the brain never powers down. It changes mode. Through the night, the parts that bind sights, sounds, and memories into one scene fall out of sync, and the chemistry shifts. So the outside world is turned down like a dimmer. A relay deep in the brain acts like a gate for the senses, and in that mode, the gate is mostly closed, so the whole becomes many small islands of activity. That's why the sense of a single world fades. Then time and light begin to push. The body's clock has been counting the hours, and the chemistry tilts again, so alert signals rise and the gate starts to open. Long paths across the brain begin to lock together, and the scattered islands join up. When that happens, the brain can build a single scene again, with a place for a self inside it, and it feels like the same self, because the thread of memory never left. The systems that store who we are keep working in the background, and the body keeps sending its slow heartbeat of signals. So when the network reconnects, there's a ready story to step back into. Awareness returns because a living brain is built to model the world, and the moment it can act, the lights come back on. Is God another word for the unknown? It's a fair question, because we often name the places our knowledge runs out. Long ago, thunder felt like anger in the sky, and disease felt like a curse. So the word God sometimes covered that space. As our tools improved, those shadows lifted, and we found weather and microbes. So it can look as if God is just a label for ignorance. But that's not the only way the word is used. For many, God isn't a gap in a map, but the reason there's a map. It's a way of talking about why there is a universe, and why minds can ask questions, and why some things feel sacred. Science is good at the how and the what. It draws a line from causes to effects, and it keeps pushing that line forward. But there's always a horizon. Explain the Big Bang, and a new question appears. Explain the brain, and the mystery of experience remains. The unknown doesn't vanish, it moves. So is God another word for the unknown? Sometimes, when God is used to plug holes, and those holes shrink. But not always, when God means the depth beneath the whole story, not the missing pages. Maybe the posture is modesty. Let unknown name what we can measure and learn, and let God, if the word is used, name the claim about meaning. Keep wondering. Can perfection exist? What would we even mean by perfection? Maybe it's a thing with nothing to add and nothing to take away. In mathematics, you can write that. A perfect circle is every point the same distance from a center, and that's exact. But make a circle in metal, and under a microscope, it's a landscape. Atoms move, heat makes them shiver, and time wears edges, so matter never quite sits on the idea. So in things, perfection is a line we approach and never quite touch. Life goes further. It runs on variation. DNA copies itself and it makes tiny mistakes, and those mistakes are how species change. A truly perfect copy every time would freeze a lineage, and it would lose its future. Brains learn the same way. We try, we miss, we adjust, and the errors are the map. And for us, meaning isn't a number. A performance can be technically flawless and still feel empty, and a voice that cracks once can carry a life. The faces we love aren't exact, and that's how we know them. We don't want a perfect friend. We want a faithful one. So can perfection exist? Yes, as a clear idea and a shared aim, but not as a lasting thing in a changing world. The ideal points the way, and the world stays alive in the small gap between the aim and the real. Will the questions ever stop? It's tempting to hope for a final answer, like a last page where everything makes sense. But questions don't work like that, because each answer maps a small patch of the unknown, and the edge of the map grows. Solve what stars are, and new puzzles appear about how they form and fade, and what came before them. Even a perfect theory of nature would raise a deeper why. Why this set of rules and not another? Why anything at all? And there's the human side. Questions begin before words, when a child points and wonders, and they keep going through every stage of a life. They pause when life is full or hard, and then they return, often sharper, because asking isn't just gathering facts. It's how the mind finds place and meaning. It's how a person notices that the world is larger than habit. So will they stop? For an individual life, yes, one day. For our species, not likely. As long as there are new tools and new minds, answers will open further doors. And even if we learned the shape of the universe, we'd still look at a night sky and ask what it means to be here, now, in it. Maybe that's the best sign we're alive. The horizon moves because we move toward it. Who, in the end, is asking? When a question appears in the mind, it feels like a single voice speaks. It seems like there's an owner, but that voice is built from many small things working together. The brain joins signals from eyes and ears and skin, and from the heart and the gut, and it keeps a running map of the body and the world. It stitches that map to memories of what has happened, and to guesses about what might happen, so there's a thread that can say, I language, puts a name on that thread, and the name holds it still long enough to ask. But it isn't a tiny pilot behind the eyes. It's a process. Nerve cells spark and fall quiet, and the mix changes with hunger and fear and trust, and with the voices learned from family and culture. Even the question carries echoes of teachers and books and friends. So who asks? It's this living pattern, here and now. It's not quite the same pattern that asked yesterday, because bodies change and memories shift. But the thread stays tied because the story keeps being told. And underneath there's a larger truth. The atoms were made in stars and shaped by life over deep time, and they woke as a person. So the world has arranged itself into a mouth that can ask the world what it is.